Putin is dragging his special operation into Azerbaijan as well. The first steps have been taken. Shock! The Kremlin is openly playing with fire. Aliyev responded instantly. Baku decided to act preemptively and struck its own blow against Moscow's plans. A surprise no one expected. Azerbaijan is supplying weapons to Ukraine, and serious ones at that. Sensational details about this coming up in just a moment.
The special military operation knows no borders and can take place anywhere, even on the Caspian Sea. Kremlin propagandists have started warning Azerbaijan. Solovyov, Gurulyov, and others are threatening to harass Azerbaijani entrepreneurs in Russia and possibly even carry out a so-called special military operation like in Ukraine.
And soon the Caspian may find itself in a situation where even NATO bases could appear there. And this is so dangerous that, from a geopolitical standpoint, it could lead to consequences where this might not be the last special military operation of our generation.
If they also start harassing the local guys, whose business activities are quite clear, then things will change dramatically. How much things will change, I don't know, but there is another way. The term special military operation is quite flexible. A flexible operation that can stretch along the entire border, flexible indeed.
The reason for such hysteria is the agreements reached between Ilham Aliyev and Nikol Pashinyan. Azerbaijan and Armenia have renounced territorial claims against each other and signed a peace agreement in Washington. The parties, in their relations, refrain from the use of force or the threat of its use against territorial integrity or political independence or in any other way.
Undoubtedly, this already marks a break in relations with the Kremlin, and the aforementioned trilateral document from November 9, 2020, where Putin acted as a mediator, is now essentially history. At least that's how it is perceived in the South Caucasus, in Azerbaijan and Armenia. That's unequivocal. 5 years later, today, the geopolitical situation has changed. Today, the United States is acting as the mediator, and the entire configuration, the geopolitical configuration in the South Caucasus is changing.
Russia does not agree with this turn of events, and a new escalation with the Russian Federation is expected in the South Caucasus. On the night of August 6th, Russian drones attacked the Orlivka gas complex station in the Odessa region, through which Azerbaijani gas enters Ukraine. 2 days later, on August 8th, Russian drones attacked the Sokar oil depot in the Odessa region, injuring 4 company employees. The next day, Ilham Aliyev spoke with Volodymyr Zelensky and accused Russia of Putin's strikes on Azerbaijani facilities in Ukraine. During the phone conversation, both sides condemned Russia's deliberate airstrikes on the oil depot owned by the Azerbaijani company Sokar and other facilities of our country on Ukrainian territory, as well as on the gas compressor station that transports Azerbaijani gas to Ukraine. They also emphasized their confidence that this would in no way lead to a suspension of energy cooperation between Azerbaijan and Ukraine. Aliyev also ordered $2 million to be allocated for humanitarian aid to Ukraine.
All of this is part of the ongoing confrontation between Russia and Azerbaijan, which began with that very air disaster and continues to this day. And then there was the most recent summit in Washington. In other words, there is a geopolitical confrontation underway. Tensions have arisen, relations have become strained, and at this point, it doesn't really matter why or how it started. Now, there are even strikes on the airbase. Sorry, I mean the oil depot. It's just part of it.
Azerbaijani media, citing government sources, report that if Russia continues its aggressive policy toward Azerbaijan's interests, then official Baku will begin to consider lifting the embargo on supplying weapons to Ukraine that are currently in its arsenal. Although Russian war correspondents claim that Azerbaijan has long since made the decision in favor of supplying weapons to Ukraine,
considering that, according to a number of sources, Baku is already launching the production of 120 mm and 155 mm artillery shells for their subsequent shipment to Ukraine, the decision has been made in any case. The only question is how this will be carried out, openly and directly or through a chain of intermediaries and front companies.
There have already been several problems in interstate relations between Russia and Azerbaijan. For example, in July of 2022, information emerged that Azerbaijan was supplying guided aerial bombs, as well as, in part, 82 mm mortars or, well, other artillery shells. At that time, Azerbaijan claimed that it wasn't the Ministry of Defense doing this, but rather private companies, as if Azerbaijan were some kind of Germany Here, private military companies can engage in arms supplies.
Azerbaijan has openly chosen a new ally. That ally is the United States, and Ilham Aliyev is no longer afraid of Kremlin threats and is ready for open confrontation. Whereas previously arms supplies to Ukraine were kept secret, now Azerbaijan plans to openly provide weapons to Ukraine to fight against the Kremlin. And Putin has in fact finally lost his influence in this region.
A new threat from Belarus now means they could not only enter the territory of Ukraine or NATO, but also start a nuclear war. The famous Oreshnik continues to trouble Putin. Lukashenko has gone through with it. This new saber rattling seems to be getting out of control. Could the joint exercises between the Kremlin and Minsk literally blow up the world? All the details are coming up in just a moment.
Russia and Belarus, during their joint Zapad 2025 exercises, plan to practice the use of nuclear weapons and the Oreshnik.
Of course, we plan to work on the issues of planning the use of nuclear weapons. This is, above all, an important element of our strategic deterrence. As for Oreshnik, the head of state has spoken about it more than once. All decisions have been made, the location has been determined, and work is underway. Well, of course, as part of our Zapad exercises, together with our Russian colleagues, we will also work on the planning of the use of this type of weapon.
This is an interesting statement, considering that just a month ago, both Putin and Lukashenko were saying that the first Oreshnik installation might only appear in Belarus at the end of the year.
The first thing I want to say in this regard, we have produced the first serial Oreshnik complex, the first serial missile, and it has been delivered to the troops. Now the production line is up and running. First and second, our specialists, as well as Belarusian military specialists and Russian ones, have chosen a site for the future positions. Work is currently underway to prepare these positions, so most likely we will resolve this issue by the end of the year.
Well, we're not jumping ahead. We're proceeding calmly. There's no need to rush to get ahead.
We understand perfectly well ourselves that if they have gone into mass production, as Putin said at that meeting on the bench, well, it has only just happened, literally just now. So there aren't and won't be any large quantities of this Oreshnik. Because again, our intelligence and our military experts say that it's more of a handcrafted product.
There are actually a lot of true stories connected to Oreshnik and Belarus straight from Lukashenko himself. At one point, he didn't know that the components were being manufactured in Belarus.
Recently, Vladimir Vladimirovich called me and said, listen, about this Oreshnik. I said, well, did you promise me or not? No. He says, that's not what I mean. Do you know I'm telling you that the majority of Oreshnik is actually made in Belarus? I said, that's the first I've heard of it. He said, well, look into it. I started looking into it, and it turns out we've been manufacturing these Russian missile launchers for a long time. I said, well, that's just great. A few missiles, but we'll make the launchers ourselves. By the end of the year, I won't say how many, but we've already created these launchers.
So Lukashenko was boasting that he would decide himself when to press the button.
You probably noticed that I had only one condition for Putin. We in Belarus will determine the targets, not the Russians, but you'll help us operate them since we don't know how yet. So we'll be pressing the button together, God forbid if it comes to that, but we'll be the ones choosing the targets.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
He agreed.
It's awkward to speak too loudly about nuclear matters like nuclear tests or the presence of nuclear weapons or plans for a nuclear response in case of aggression against the Russian Federation. But you can speak loudly about Oreshnik because, after all, that's not a nuclear threat.
So will Oreshnik appear in Belarus by the end of the year or any day now?
We haven't set a specific time frame. First of all, it's not urgent. Of course, I understand that Oreshnik is needed in Russia as well and so on. It's not urgent. Well, and then it's not that simple. When I said 10 complexes, well, I was kidding. Well, listen, we then left separately with Putin. He told me, listen, you said 10. I didn't promise you 10. I say, well, you just said 10. He says, well, we can't get 10 that quickly. I was just joking with the journalist. Of course, I understand 10 complexes. Are you serious? That's crazy money. We literally have Oreshnik coming any day now. We agreed with President Putin that the next installation will actually be delivered to Belarus even earlier than to Russia.
On the one hand, the first task is solved internally for propaganda purposes. Look, we're surrounded by enemies, but we have a very powerful weapon called Oreshnik. That's it. So don't be afraid and stick with me, with Lukashenko, and everything will be fine for you. And the second propaganda task is aimed at the external audience, which the Belarusians are now carrying out, essentially trying to scare Western countries.
The most interesting thing is that the upcoming Zapad 2025 exercises are being presented as very safe and even peace-loving.
There are about 30 military attaches in our country, 9 of them from NATO countries. They will also have the opportunity. We are inviting all of them to observe our exercises. In this way, we once again emphasize our peacefulness and openness, and the fact that we truly want to reduce this military tension, which unfortunately we see and feel. Well, as they say, we are making the first move.
Even Lukashenko himself directly refuted all the rumors about where that very attack is supposedly being prepared from.
We have proven to all of them that we are not planning to attack you there and that we will conduct the exercises in the center, deep inside Belarus.
For what purpose?
Courses.
Here are the changes to the course plans.
So, as not to give you, as I already said, any reason to further accuse us of being aggressors, of planning to attack, at the very least, the countries of Eastern Europe, Poland, the Baltic states, and especially Ukraine.
On the contrary, I would actually interpret this particular interview and Lukashenko's significantly shifted emphasis as very real and concrete evidence that such a substantial operation is indeed being meticulously prepared by the Russians, and that, in absolutely no way whatsoever, have they truly stepped back or completely abandoned its full and complete implementation.
As for Oreshnik, as they say, they started off on a high note. They boasted that it was the most innovative and deadly weapon. They threatened to wipe out the entire West with it, but everyone can see how it ended, with isolated public statements and zero real results.